Pepsi, a long-held staple of American capitalism. Introduced in 1898 and popularized in the 1950s, Pepsi has become an American megacorporation that owns many products beyond just the soda, including Gatorade, Fritos, Quaker Oats, and many other well-known food products. But did you know that Pepsi, for a brief time, had the sixth largest military fleet in the world? This video will explain how that happened. Pepsi became the sixth largest military fleet in 1989. But to explain how they got there, we need to go back 3 decades into the 1950s. The 1950s saw the rise in popularity of Pepsi Cola, to the extent to where it was beginning to rival another American staple, Coca-Cola. The 1950s were also a time in history where there were 2 world superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. These 2 countries were constantly competing and rivaling each other in what is known as the Cold War. In an attempt to improve relations between the 2 superpowers, both countries would host cultural exhibitions of the other country, where citizens of each country would get exposure to the culture and achievements of the other superpower. The Soviet Union would hold an exposition in New York City in June of 1959. It was mostly focused on Soviet space travel, as they were more advanced than the U.S. was in 1959. The U.S. exposition in Moscow would be held in August of 1959. This exposition focused on new American capitalist products/inventions, and focused on showing Soviet citizens the useful and enjoyable goods American capitalism could produce. A certain executive of Pepsi would head to this exposition with an ambitious goal of popularizing the beverage in the Soviet Union. His name was Donald M. Kendall. Kendall was determined to get a photo of Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev drinking a Pepsi at the exposition. His wildest dreams came true. Kendall managed to capture a photo that went viral, by 1950 standards anyways, of Khrushchev speaking with then-presidential candidate Richard Nixon while sipping a Pepsi. This led to the explosion of Pepsi's popularity in the Soviet Union, and by the 1980s, the Soviet Union would be consuming around 1 billion servings of Pepsi per year. Following the 1959 exhibitions, the demand for Pepsi Cola skyrocketed throughout the Soviet Union. However, the USSR would have to acquire the soft beverage through an exchange of their own beverage, Stolichная vodka. The Soviets would trade vodka because the ruble was not an internationally exchanged currency and held almost no value outside of the Soviet Union. This resulted in Pepsi Company having exclusive rights to the Russian vodka brand in Western markets. However, following the Soviet Union's 1979 invasion of Afghanistan, the U.S. and its Western allies would boycott many Soviet products, including vodka. This resulted in Pepsi being unable to trade its cola in exchange for vodka. So in the spring of 1989, the Soviets agreed to trade Pepsi 17 submarines, 3 warships, including a frigate, a cruiser, and a destroyer. Pepsi also bought new Soviet oil tankers and leased them out. Pepsi would sell most of these military items for scrap metal. But this exchange briefly resulted in Pepsi holding the 6th largest military fleet in a world with 195 sovereign nations. In return, Pepsi more than doubled the number of Pepsi plants in the Soviet Union. A Pepsi executive sarcastically scoffed to the U.S. Department of Defense, "We're disarming the Soviet Union faster than the U.S. government is." Unfortunately, a lot of this deal fell through when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and many Russians never got to benefit from the Pepsi plants that were built in parts of the Soviet Union that are now separate countries from Russia. However, Russia is still Pepsi's biggest market outside of the U.S. Thank you to everyone who watched the entire video. If you would like to watch more videos to learn about more crazy things that have happened, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.